Hello everyone and welcome to another video. This time we're gonna be reacting to just work 6 days a week. I was just browsing the internet and I saw this title and I was like, okay, this has to be content material. So yeah, let's see what this is about.
Late last month, the paragon of wise economic decisions, Greece, introduced a 6-day
Damn it. Bad cough. Sorry. Yeah, 6 good economic decisions. The country who went bankrupt 5 or 6 times in the last 200 years. Who kept borrowing money from the European Central Bank and were like, yeah, we're definitely gonna pay it back. We're investing it smartly. No, they didn't. They didn't. 6 days a week. Of course, they made that. They made that a thing.
A 48-hour work week. The country did this at the same time as its European neighbors have been successfully experimenting with shorter 4-day work weeks. But the Greek government has insisted that this new change is the key to turning its economy around by simply working harder than everybody else. It's a bold strategy, and for the sake of working conditions everywhere, we better hope it doesn't work. Unfortunately, it just might.
Greece has become the first country in the European Union to introduce a 6-day working week for some businesses.
The world's biggest trial of a 4-day working week has ended in success, with the performance of companies largely unharmed and workers feeling healthier and happier.
Employer says, this is it. Take it or leave it. You can't do anything about it.
No, they're saying they feel healthier and better, and she's like, take it or leave it. There's no other way around it. Therefore, you either accept it or fuck off. Therefore, it's not that good. 6 days a week.
Greece has an aging and shrinking population. According to the country's statistics authority, over 500,000 young, educated citizens left the country to find work with better paying conditions elsewhere. It's very easy for Greek workers to find jobs that pay better in other countries, because as members of the European Union, they are free to reside and work across borders with very few restrictions. In order to correct for this loss of manpower, the government has decided to introduce a 6-day work week to make up for all the workers who have left the country and to support all the elderly people who can no longer support themselves. By raw arithmetic, their logic makes sense. Kind of. Output is the hourly productivity of a worker multiplied by how many hours they work. If Greece has fewer workers, it can increase its output by getting those who are left to work even longer and harder. What they have failed to account for, though, is that a lot of the productive workers still left in the country might decide that they would rather go and work 4 days per week in Belgium for double the average salary than stick it out grinding 6 days a week for half the pay in Greece.
That's true.
If your country has a problem with young people leaving to find better work elsewhere, the solution is probably not to make working conditions even worse. But their new plan argues that by getting on their hashtag grind, they can bring people back by just paying them more. There is also an argument that longer hours tend to be the hallmark of highly compensated professions. C-suite executives, medical practitioners, investment bankers, corporate lawyers, and senior tech workers all regularly put in long hours, and they are all generally well compensated for that time. These professionals are expected to be on call all the time and meet the demands of their clients and patients who simply can't wait. Hospitals have been routinely understaffed and have been relying on staff working longer overtime to keep operations running. These long hours have been linked to unnecessary patient deaths and worker burnout across the country.
Of course.
But doctors and nurses who are willing to stay on call for these odd hours can make an absolute ton of money. Investment banking teams are doing much less important work than medical professionals, and they spread their teams even more thin so that fees on transactions only need to be spread between a few overworked team members. In my own personal investment banking experience, even on very large deals, we never had a team larger than 5 people because managing directors knew that the analysts and associates had to grind it out anyway. And why would they share their bonus with more headcount? If Greece can become the place where people work harder, they should attract these kinds of high-paying jobs, right? Well, not really. Greece already has high unemployment, and anybody who could work in these roles has likely already left to somewhere like London, Frankfurt, or come here to America. For most jobs, there is absolutely no need to be in the office 6 days a week. If you work in an office, you know that you have a set of tasks to do, and once they are done, your new task becomes looking busy for the rest of the week. But that's exactly the point. This law isn't really targeting office jobs. In fact, most of them are explicitly excluded from this law. Instead of magically creating high-paying jobs like promised, what this new law is really about is squeezing the most out of workers on the other end of the pay scale. Retail, transport, construction, and hospitality are jobs where companies just need someone behind a counter or on the tools for as many hours of operation as possible to serve customers periodically. A large share of what's left of the Greek workforce are in these types of roles, and businesses are already demanding a lot of extra hours from their employees. Greece may have a reputation for a laid-back lifestyle and 3 p.m. siestas. But according to data from the OECD, the average Greek actually works a full 80 hours per year more than the average American, and we are already way above average. The average German, on the other hand, works 500 fewer hours every year, and they are still more than twice as productive as workers in Greece. High unemployment has meant that employers can ask a lot from their employees because finding another job is extremely hard, and replacing a worker that isn't willing to work some unpaid overtime is extremely easy. This new
I believe I watched like a video on YouTube of an Amazon representative or something in Poland, and one of the Polish people asked, "When are you gonna open a franchise or a warehouse in Poland?" And the Amazon guy was like, "Never. Your unemployment is just too low. You have not enough unemployed people. We can't change them constantly whenever we feel like it."
6-day workweek is really being sold as a way to formalize what's been going on in workplaces across the country already. To make matters worse, the wording of the law makes it all sound very optional. DW reports that while the 40-hour workweek is still officially in place, employers are permitted to require staff to work up to 2 unpaid hours per day for a limited period in return for more free time. The problem is that if businesses have the option to ask their staff to work 2 hours of unpaid overtime every day, and those staff can't say no, then that's just going to be the new normal.
Of course.
In the same article, an emeritus professor of labor law is quoted as saying, "Law 5053/2023 will kill off the 5-day workweek for good."
Yeah.
So it's probably not as optional as politicians would like workers to believe. Some people may leave, but most of those who can already have. Better opportunities exist in other EU countries, but a lot of Greeks don't have the resources to move their families across Europe to compete for a job against a local in a country like Germany. This is about squeezing what is left from who is left. Look, I normally try my absolute best to form a rounded argument that represents both sides when addressing stories like this, but this 6-day workweek is just fucking dumb. It won't make workers work harder. It won't create high-paying jobs. It won't improve productivity. It will drive away what few young workers the country has left. It will lower hourly wages and create terrible working conditions for the whole country.
To the Greece to
It's
fuck up their economy.
all-around terrible policy. But unfortunately, it's not just Greece doing this. It's easy and sometimes even fun to laugh at dumb decisions made by out-of-touch politicians. But the Greek problem is not just a problem in Greece. Greece is a very expensive country to live in because it's so popular with wealthy tourists who make their money elsewhere.
Yeah.
But the minimum wage is only 830 euros per month.
Tourism left unchecked can increase inflation, increase prices. Yeah, that's obvious. About the working hours, East Asia has this thing of overworking. Yeah, and it got so bad that I believe the South Korean government created like a law which forced the companies to shut off the electricity in the building after a certain amount of hours, of like 10 or after a certain amount of time, to make sure people don't overwork themselves, because most would overwork themselves to death. The happiness is at the bottom of the charts. Yeah, it's quite terrible, and they had to do something about it. Greece will not be anything different.
According to wageindicator.org. That means the average Greek needs the extra work anyway, whether it's legally mandated or not. But let me make a big, bold claim here. Wages haven't kept up with living expenses anymore. Crazy, I know. But the way we are dealing with it is kind of strange. The good news is that the average employee almost everywhere is working fewer hours than we used to in previous generations. According to data from the OECD, annual hours worked per worker have declined significantly since the 1950s. But you would be forgiven for thinking that it doesn't really feel like that. And you would be kind of right. The amount of time workers are spending at work has gone down, but the total number of people has gone up a lot too. Put it simply, what this means is that even though the average individual worker is spending less time on the job, the average household is spending more time working, because it's now much less likely that a woman in the household is a stay-at-home parent. Now, women having the ability to enter the workforce in a meaningful way has been positive progress.
Of course.
But it's
Increased productivity in general, higher GDP, the household has a better salary in general.
also now become a necessity.
Yeah,
Having a stay-at-home
sadly,
partner
this is also a
and a
problem.
woman is an unaffordable luxury for most households in America.
This has become a thing I've seen also in America. A lot of women wish they could be homestay wives, like take care of the household, but they just can't afford it.
Especially younger workers. This means the average household is dedicating time to more work, and household chores are not taken care of by a single person while another person focuses on work. So while these numbers might look like we are moving in the right direction, the reality is a little bit more complicated. You might have also noticed that the number of people in the workforce is actually going down, but that's largely because as a larger share of our population gets older, some of them can retire while still of working age. This was accelerated by a huge drop at the start of the pandemic when a lot of people who were almost ready to retire were laid off and just never went back to work. This is also great. People should be able to retire and enjoy their twilight years. But with an aging population, this also put more pressure on younger people to pick up the slack.
Yep.
What this means is that there is a bit of a disconnect between what these charts show and what the average worker will experience. According to a study conducted by ADP Research, the average American worker is now doing 9.2 hours of unpaid and often unreported overtime.
Jesus.
That is a number suspiciously close to the extra hours that are going to be demanded of Greek workers. The only difference is they were dumb enough to say it out loud. That also doesn't account.
Wait, hold on.
The only difference is
Deci a measure Grizzly clarifies push for 6 days back after passing a lot of oh yeah. That thing.
they were dumb
Yeah.
enough to say it out loud.
Guys, we know we work already overtime, unpaid overtime. Let's make it legal.
That also
Let's make it a law.
doesn't account for the growing number of people working in
the
a
Greeks.
full-time role and then doing informal gig work or freelancing on the side. The number of new businesses created in America has exploded in recent years. And while this is normally a sign of a healthy, prospering economy, there might be a little bit more to this data. According to the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, 5.5 million new business applications were filed with them in 2023, an all-time high. But suspiciously, these new business applications were coming from the states with the worst employment problems. People are not really starting businesses anymore because they have a great idea and want to capitalize on it. They are starting them to formalize income from informal work like Fiverr, Uber, and yes, even YouTube. According to a Bankrate survey, more than 1 in 3 Americans now have a side hustle on top of their full-time job, and more than 30% of respondents said they expected to need the extra income their side hustle brings in for the rest of their lives.
True.
The number of people doing
Became
a
a
side
standard.
hustle jumps to almost 50% amongst Gen Zers and is obviously significantly lower amongst baby boomers who either just have one job or are retired. Picking up a side hustle in addition to your full-time job can be an amazing way to start a business while maintaining the safety of a stable-ish income. I did it while starting this channel, and Richard from The Plain Bagel made an amazing video recently about why he still works his full-time job instead of just focusing on his almost 1 million subscriber YouTube channel. The key difference here is that it was a choice rather than a necessity.
Having a job besides YouTube, just like me. I have a job, and yeah, it's quite stable. The pay is good. The job, I like what I do, and yeah, stability brings a certain amount of. I can make whatever I want whenever I want if it's quality, and try to constantly improve the quality, regardless of how my channel numbers are. Mainly because I know it's not my main income, and if anything happens, if there's something I don't like with the channel, I can just move it, change it, see what happens.
Mr. Bagel is probably doing well for himself with his YouTube channel, but that's not your typical side hustle. Ted Rossman, the credit analyst that ran the survey, said that while it's admirable that so many Americans are putting in extra time and effort into their side hustles, it's unfortunate that most are doing so simply to fund their expenses. This is especially troubling since if side hustles are just a way to increase income as opposed to building up a business or monetizing a hobby, then they are mostly a pretty terrible waste of time. Most people with a side hustle who were surveyed were effectively just working another job that paid well below the minimum wage. So, while it looks like the amount of time you spend working has gone down, and you might even be lucky enough to live in a place experimenting with a 4-day work week, we haven't filled that extra time with leisure or just getting a good night's sleep. We have split domestic work, taken on second jobs and side hustles, and just stuck around answering Slack messages off the clock. A lot of us are working 6 days a week. Greece was just the only one to admit it. Now, I'm going to be writing an article about the countries doing the opposite of Greece and reporting on how the 4-day workweek experiments have been going in my completely free email newsletter. So be sure to sign up for that at the link below if you're interested in reading these kinds of articles. Another big driver of people working all this
Oh well, I guess they said this is just work 6 days a week. Yeah, of course, Greece was the first to implement this. Not surprised. However, yes, I knew this, that the number of hours, unworked hours, was a thing, but I didn't expect them to be like the same amount that Greece implemented. I don't know, it just confuses me. Why they made it an actual law. They could have just left it as it was. Or maybe this was a good thing. Maybe it was like an alarm. Like, bro, we know what's happening. Now we're gonna make it a law. If you don't like it, maybe you should check it for yourself. Alright, thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it and see you all next time.